fragrant harbor. To the outside world, the city is a testament to the future. It is a blinding cathedral of steel and glass, a place where money moves at the speed of light, and the neon signs burn hot enough to turn night into day. It is a city of 7 million souls, stacked on top of one another, living in towers that scrape the belly of the sky. It is efficient, it is wealthy, it is modern, but if you live here, you know the truth. You know that Hong Kong is not built on bedrock, it is built on bones. We like to think that our electric lights keep the darkness at bay. We like to think that our air-conditioned shopping malls and high-speed trains have buried the ancient superstitions of the past. But Hong Kong is a city of deep, abiding contradictions. Walk 10 feet away from a Tesla dealership, and you will find an old woman burning paper effigies in a rusty tin can on the sidewalk, sending money to the dead. Look up at the most expensive skyscrapers in the Central District, and you will see massive holes cut into their centers, dragon gates, left open so the spirits of the mountains can pass through to the sea without anger. Even the billionaires here fear the dead. In a city this dense, tragedy does not dissipate. When you pack this much life into such a small space, you also pack in the death. The energy, what the Chinese call Ying, gets trapped. It seeps into the concrete foundations. It hides in the narrow dripping alleyways of Kowloon. It festers in the humid air of the stairwells. From the brutal Japanese occupation in the 1940s that turned schools into slaughterhouses, to the tragic, lonely suicides of today's pressure cooker society, Hong Kong is drowning in unseen currents. There are places in this city where the veil is thin, places where the history is so violent, so sudden, that the land itself remembers. Tonight, we are turning off the neon lights. We are stepping away from the crowded markets and the noise of the traffic. We are going to walk through the shadows of 3 specific locations in Hong Kong. These are not movie scripts. These are the real stories, the documented incidents, and the enduring nightmares that keep this city looking over its shoulder. Story 1, The Wailing of the Red House. Our first stop takes us to the district of Wan Chai. Today, Wan Chai is known for its nightlife, its bars, and its chaotic energy. But if you walk up the steep slope of Ship Street, leaving the noise of the drunk tourists behind you, you will find an anomaly. Surrounded by hyper-modern luxury high-rises that cost millions of dollars, sits a rotting, 2-story red brick mansion. It looks like a decaying tooth in a perfect smile. The windows are boarded up. Vines choke the red brick walls, crawling up like green veins. This is Koo Terrace, but to the locals, it is simply the Red House. And for decades, it was the most feared address on Hong Kong Island. The house was built around 1915 by a wealthy Shanghai silk merchant family. For a time, it was a symbol of prosperity, a beautiful blend of Eastern and Western architecture. But the history of Hong Kong is cleaved in two by a single date, December 25th, 1941, Black Christmas, the day the British surrendered and the Imperial Japanese Army took control of the city. The 3 years and 8 months of darkness began, and Koo Terrace became a centerpiece of that darkness. The Japanese military seized the finest properties for their officers. Koo Terrace was commandeered. What happened inside those red brick walls during the occupation is a subject of horrific rumor and historical trauma that has scarred the neighborhood for generations. It is widely believed that the house was used as a military brothel, a comfort station. Women from the local districts were dragged inside to serve the officers. The neighbors whispered of screams that lasted all night, piercing the silence of the curfew. They spoke of bodies being carried out the back entrance under the cover of darkness, wrapped in straw mats, and dumped into the shallow ravines of the nearby hillside. Torture, rape, murder. The house absorbed it all. The violence was so concentrated that it stained the very atmosphere of the building. When the war ended in 1945 and the Japanese surrendered, the house sat empty. The original owners didn't want it back. The trauma was too deep. Developers were too terrified to touch it. In a city starved for land, where every square inch is worth a fortune, the red house sat rotting for 50 years. It became a void, a dead zone. People who walked past it reported sudden, overwhelming feelings of nausea. Some felt a heavy pressure on their chests, as if invisible hands were pushing them away. Others claimed to see shadowy figures watching them from the second-floor balcony. Women in cheongsam dresses, their faces blurred or weeping. Green, ghostly fires were seen burning inside the empty rooms at night, despite there being no electricity connected to the property. But these were just stories, until November of 2003. This is the incident that cemented the Red House's reputation, not as folklore, but as a dangerous reality. A group of 8 teenagers, bored and looking for a thrill, decided to break into Koo Terrace. They wanted to prove the legends wrong. They wanted to show that it was just an old, empty house. They climbed the rusted back gate under the cover of darkness. They later reported that the air inside the compound was unnaturally cold, despite the warm Hong Kong night. It was a stillness that felt heavy, like standing at the bottom of a deep pool. As they explored the ground floor, they found nothing but dust, debris, and the graffiti of previous trespassers. Emboldened, 3 of the girls in the group decided to go upstairs, to the second floor, the place where the worst of the wartime atrocities supposedly took place. The boys stayed downstairs, perhaps sensing something the girls ignored. A few minutes passed. Then, the silence of the Wan Chai night was shattered by a sound that didn't seem human. It was a high-pitched, hysterical shrieking. The boys rushed upstairs, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. They found the 3 girls in a state of absolute terror. But it wasn't just fear. It was something else. One of the girls was sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth, mumbling in a low voice that witnesses said did not sound like her own. Another girl suddenly stood up, her eyes rolling back in her head until only the whites were visible. She lunged for the balcony, trying to throw herself over the railing to the concrete courtyard below. The boys barely managed to tackle her, holding her down as she thrashed with supernatural strength. The group fled the house in chaos, dragging their hysterical friends onto Ship Street. They called the police. This is where the story leaves the realm of urban legend and enters the public record. When the police and paramedics arrived, they found a scene of madness. The girls were violent, incoherent, and terrified. It took multiple grown officers to restrain these teenage girls and strap them to gurneys. The local newspapers the next day ran headlines about mass hysteria at the ghost house. Witnesses reported that the girls were shouting in a dialect they didn't speak. screaming phrases like, "Let me die here," and "The soldiers are coming." They were terrified of an invisible enemy. The official explanation was psychological, a collective panic attack brought on by the spooky atmosphere. But the families of the girls didn't buy it. They knew what they saw. In the days that followed, the families hired Taoist priests to perform exorcisms. They burned incense and paper offerings outside the house, begging the spirits to release their grip on the children. Today, Koo Terrace has been preserved as a historical site. It has been cleaned up, the vegetation cut back, but if you stand at the gate of Ship Street late at night, when the city noise dies down, the air still feels different there. It is colder, quieter. The locals will tell you that you can scrub the bricks, but you cannot scrub the memory. Some stains go all the way to the bone. Story 2. The High Street Madhouse. We move now from the residential hills to the district of Ying. There's a building here that wears a mask. From the street, looking up, you see a magnificent, imposing granite facade dating back to the 1890s. It looks distinguished, historical, a remnant of the British colonial era. It is currently used as a community center, but the locals know what it used to be. They know it as the High Street Ghost House. Built in 1892, it was originally the quarters for European nurses, but it is best known for its later role, the mental hospital. For decades, this was the end of the line for Hong Kong's mentally ill. We must remember that in the early 20th century, psychiatric care was not what it is today. It was brutal. Patients were often treated little better than animals, chained to walls in the damp basement, subjected to primitive shocks and restraints. The walls echoed with the screams of the forgotten. The building was a warehouse for human misery. But once again, the true horror arrived with the war. When the Japanese occupied Hong Kong, they recognized the strategic value of the solid granite building. It was a fortress. They threw the patients out, some onto the streets to starve, others executed on the spot, and turned the hospital into a military installation. But they kept the basement cells, once used to restrain the violently insane, became interrogation chambers for the Kempeitai, the Japanese secret police. If you were suspected of being a spy, a sympathizer, or a resistor, you were taken to High Street. Few returned. The stories from this period are gruesome. Decapitations were common in the courtyard. The drainage system was said to clog with blood. The sound of heavy boots and the cracking of whips replaced the cries of the patients. After the war, the building briefly returned to being a mental hospital before being abandoned in the 1970s. For 20 years, it stood derelict on the hill, a hulking stone carcass overlooking the harbor. During those 20 years, it became the ultimate test of courage for Hong Kong youths. Every weekend, teenagers would break in with flashlights, and the stories they brought back were remarkably consistent. They spoke of the temperature dropping 20 degrees the moment you crossed the threshold. They spoke of the sound of heavy boots marching on the wooden upper floors, even though the wood had long since rotted away, leaving only open air. Most terrifyingly, they spoke of the basement. Explorers reported hearing the distinct sound of chains rattling in the dark, the sound of metal dragging on stone. Others heard soft, whimpering moans that seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. There were reports of headless spirits wandering the corridors, searching for their missing parts, echoes of the wartime executions. One particularly famous account involves a motorist driving past the building late at night. He claimed to see a man dressed in a traditional hospital gown standing by the side of the road. When the driver slowed down to help, thinking it was a confused patient from a nearby clinic, the figure turned around. The driver saw that the man had no face, just a smooth surface of skin. The figure then walked through the solid granite wall of the ghost house. When the government decided to redevelop the site in the 2000s, they faced a problem. They couldn't tear down the facade. It was a protected, historic landmark, but they also couldn't ignore the reputation. Construction workers were terrified. They refused to work past sundown. There were numerous accidents on site, scaffolding collapsing for no reason, tools flying across rooms as if thrown by invisible hands. In an attempt to cleanse the site, massive Buddhist ceremonies were held. Incense was burned for days, thick clouds of smoke choking the neighborhood as monks chanted to guide the tortured souls to the next life. They gutted the inside of the building, leaving only the granite skin, and built a modern community center behind it. They tried to sanitize the horror with fresh paint and bright lights. But energy like that doesn't just leave. It gets trapped behind the new drywall. It hides in the modern plumbing. Even today, visitors to the community center report strange occurrences. Elevators that go to the basement when no button is pressed. Cold spots in the hallways. The feeling of being watched from the high arched windows. The High Street Ghost House is a perfect metaphor for Hong Kong itself. A shiny, modern exterior built directly onto a foundation of madness, torture, and death. It asks the question, can you ever really gentrify a graveyard? Story 3, The Fox Spirit of Windsor House. Our final story moves us away from ghosts of the war and into the realm of ancient Chinese mythology, clashing with modern capitalism. It takes us to Causeway Bay, one of the busiest shopping districts in the world. In the 1980s, the Windsor House was a gleaming symbol of Hong Kong's economic boom. It was a massive complex of shopping malls and restaurants. But inside this temple of commerce, a very old, very dangerous spirit was said to have taken up residence. This is the story of the fox spirit. In Chinese folklore, the fox spirit, or Huli Jing, is a shapeshifter. It can be benevolent, but it can also be mischievous and deadly. It craves essence. It craves life force. The trouble began with the marble. In the grand lobby of the Windsor House, the walls were clad in expensive, imported marble. One day, shoppers noticed something strange in the patterns of the stone. The veins of the marble seemed to form a picture. At first, it looked like clouds, but as people looked closer, they saw it clearly. It was the face of a fox. 7 distinct fox faces, in fact, appeared in the stone. Crowds began to gather. People came from all over Hong Kong to see the fox marble. At first, it was a curiosity, a novelty. But then, the accident started. A heavy glass door at the entrance shattered for no reason, injuring patrons. A security guard died suddenly of a heart attack while on duty near the marble. The atmosphere in the mall grew heavy. But the horror peaked with a specific incident involving a wealthy couple celebrating their baby's first month, a significant celebration in Chinese culture. They hosted a banquet at a restaurant inside the Windsor house. That night, the mother had a vivid, terrifying dream. In the dream, a creature with glowing red eyes and the face of a fox appeared to her. The creature told her that because the family had not paid respects to the lords of the building, the spirits in the marble, it would take the child. The mother woke up screaming. She rushed to the crib. The baby was dead. The doctors called it SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, but the mother knew. She told the press about the dream. She told them about the fox spirit. Panic swept through Hong Kong. This wasn't just a ghost in an abandoned house. This was a demon in a shopping mall. It was attacking the wealthy, the innocent. It was terrorizing the heart of the city's economy. The owners of the building could not ignore it. They did what any Hong Kong tycoon would do. They called the masters. Renowned feng shui masters were brought in to inspect the building. They confirmed the worst fears. They claimed that the marble had indeed trapped a fox spirit, and the negative energy was feeding on the patrons. The solution was drastic. The feng shui masters ordered the marble to be covered. They didn't just paint over it. They covered it with heavy wallpaper and wood paneling, sealing the faces away from human sight. They placed talismans behind the walls to bind the spirit. But they didn't stop there. If you look at the roof of the Windsor house today, you will see a strange architectural feature. There are triangular stones that look like arrowheads. These are not decorative. They are spiritual weapons placed there by the masters to shoot the bad energy and keep the fox spirit suppressed. For years, the marble remained covered. The nursery rhyme says that if you stop looking at the monster, it goes away. But the locals in Causeway Bay still walk quickly past that section of the mall. They know that behind the drywall, behind the layers of paint and modern renovation, the 7 foxes are still there, waiting, staring out from the stone with patience that only immortals possess. It is a reminder that you can build the tallest skyscrapers in the world. You can trade stocks and buy luxury cars, but you cannot evict the old gods. They were here before the concrete was poured, and they will be here long after it crumbles. These 3 stories, the Red House, the Mad House, and the Fox Spirit, are just scratching the surface of Hong Kong's hidden world. We walk through the city with our eyes on our phones, distracted by the lights, deafened by the noise. But the city is alive in ways we refuse to acknowledge. There is a concept in Hong Kong called the City of Darkness, referring to the old Kowloon-walled city, a lawless enclave that was demolished in the 90s. But in truth, the whole of Hong Kong is a city of darkness. It is a place where the barrier between the living and the dead is paper thin. Every time you hear the MTR train screech in the tunnel, ask yourself, is that just metal on metal? Or is it a scream? Every time you walk past an abandoned colonial building and you feel that sudden drop in temperature, ask yourself, is it just the air conditioning from a nearby shop? Or is it something cold reaching out to touch you? In Hong Kong, you are never truly alone. There are 7 million people here, and countless others who are something else. The next time you find yourself in the fragrant harbor, enjoying the view from the peak, or riding the Star Ferry across the black water, Take a moment to look into the shadows, but be careful, because in Hong Kong, when you stare into the shadows have a habit of staring back. Sleep well, and if you hear chains rattling in your basement, don't go downstairs.